What's going on, everybody? My name is Jonathan. Today I'm joined by two esteemed guests. Below me, or maybe to the left of me, or to the right of me, is Mr. James Arline. How you doing, James?
Doing wonderful. Great.
And folks, you've seen this man once before on the podcast as well. It's Mr. Tim Collins.
The people's champ right here.
And today we're going to discuss our least favorite portrayals of comic book characters in film. I'll go ahead and name Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor because I think that everyone probably could agree on that. Every comic book movie fan, there's no debate there. When you look at what Gene Hackman did in the early 70s and 80s Superman movies, he brought his own different flair. It wasn't necessarily what you would think of when you think of Lex Luthor. However, Jesse Eisenberg was completely a horrible choice. I mean, it was almost like it was just the complete and polar opposite of what Lex Luthor was in the comics. And it was also kind of strange to me at the end of, I think it was Batman versus Superman or maybe Justice League, one of those films where he was almost evolving into the Lex Luthor that he was going to become. They shaved his head and he was banging on the prison bars. And it was almost like he was more like the Joker than he was Lex Luthor. But
right.
That's what I think. What do you guys think?
I can agree with that. I feel like that casting choice wasn't a good option. I don't know if maybe like they had a very short list and he was the only one with like his schedule open or something. As far as character development and that, he just didn't fit the role for me. He didn't do it for me. You know, it was just a bbad fit all around.
I think we can all agree on that.
I think when the main problem with Jesse Eisenberg is that he just at the very least you have to kind of look like the guy, you know, that's right. At the very least you have to kind of look like the guy, and then you can kind of work with the personality and all that kind of stuff. It was just a total swing and a miss. They didn't get the personality. They didn't get any of the looks. I mean, I know they shaved his head at the end, but that still didn't do it for me. I mean, right. Ironically enough, you know, probably the worst Superman movie ever made was Superman Returns, and I feel like Kevin Spacey did a really good job with Lex Luthor in that movie. And yes. Then, you know, you go from that movie and that Lex Luthor, which was a terrible movie, but a good Lex Luthor, to Jesse Eisenberg, and it was just like it just didn't connect. And it was supposed to be the movie that kind of brought the whole DCEU together. Just failed miserably. So yeah,
that was when things started to crumble, in my opinion, for the DCEU. Like, you know, you saw their casting choice for Jesse Eisenberg, and I was thinking like, okay, that's ballsy, but they better follow through with it. He better be really good. He better knock my socks off. Just like there was believe it or not, guys, there was a lot of blowback when Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker. Mm-hmm. Originally. Everyone was like, oh, you got the guy from Brokeback Mountain. You know, how can this guy be the Joker? But obviously he blew our socks off, you know. So that's the thing. If you cast somebody like Jesse Eisenberg, you better blow my socks off, Jesse. And you dang sure didn't blow my socks off.
One that I had written down here, and it's a very recent movie. I hardly ever go to the MCU for this stuff because they normally do a really good job. But I feel like what they did with Taskmaster recently was one that was just, they changed the character too much anyway. And of course, by the time they got to who the character actually was, it was a completely different storyline than what we had in the comic books. So so that's one that just did not do it for me, was the Taskmaster. It essentially was like a combination of a RoboCop and a James Cameron Terminator, and then we find out it was the daughter of the guy. And you know, now to Marvel's credit, they never officially called that character Taskmaster. They called the program the Taskmaster Initiative, and that so they could just completely go back on it and be like, that wasn't Taskmaster. So I'm kind of hoping that's what they do, but that was one that just totally left me. I couldn't believe that the MCU would do anything like that. It wasn't a character that I had deep emotional ties to, so I didn't cry about it or anything, but it was bad. And so I hope they learned from it and moved on. So there we go.
I'm not as familiar with Taskmaster from the comics. I've seen him like maybe in a video game, I want to say. I am like loosely familiar with what he's supposed to look like, but yeah, there was a lot of complaints about that. You know, apparently he's very talkative in the comics.
Yeah, definitely not a cyborg. Definitely not a cyborg. That's for sure. Yep. So, it was not good. So it had the potential to fit that storyline really well, which is why I think we all really liked it when it was introduced. It kind of just ended up being your typical heat-seeking missile villain that, quite frankly, I just was not a fan of.
I'll give one that's controversial, but I'll go ahead and give it. In my personal opinion, I didn't like Tom Hardy as Bane. That may be controversial among you guys, but his voice for me was laughable. I guess as time goes by more, I have a little bit less of a problem with it. But the first time I heard that dude talk in the theaters, I laughed out loud. I mean, I thought it was a joke. I was like, this is Bane?
No one cared who I was till I put on the mask.
If I pull that off, will you die?
It would be extremely painful.
You're a big guy.
For you.
Honestly, Tom Hardy's a big dude. He can come across as a big guy in some of the movies he's been in, but he didn't feel that big to me. Like, this is coming from the guy that looks like a twig. But seriously, like, he just didn't capture the essence of what Bane should be, in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? Like, he wasn't big enough. He wasn't like, he should have been. He was very imposing. I'll give him that. You know, I love the line when he's got the guy by the neck. He's like, what makes you feel like you're in charge? You know, right before he snaps the dude's neck. There were some memorable lines in there, but honestly, I wasn't a fan of his voice and I wasn't a fan of his look.
Yeah, and I'll let James talk, I promise. But you're kind of talking to the right crowd here, Jonathan, because I've got even a spicier take than that here in just a second. I'll get that in just a second. Yeah, I was not a fan of Bane either. I think Nolan got a lot of credit for the storylines being more realistic and popular storylines than what they had previously in Batman films. But yeah, the character of Bane in particular, the one thing people don't know about Tom Hardy is he's not an overwhelmingly big guy. I think he's only like 5'9" or 5'10". He's really not an overwhelmingly big guy. And the Bane that we all know from the comic books is actually like a super juiced, like ultra big guy, almost like the Hulk. So it kind of was a letdown for me as well. The voice was just not good. There were a lot of interesting voice choices in those films, and we'll get to that. But I do think that Nolan, like I said, I think everybody loves his cinematography. Everybody loves his storylines. Everyone loves how dark he directs. But ultimately, there were a few things to be desired in those movies.
I'm actually going to disagree with both of you. I like Tom Hardy's Bane.
Okay, that's good. A lot of people do.
I did. You know, I thought there was a lot of realism in that movie. You know, it was like, if it really happened, this is what it would look like. So I feel like it kind of shifted a little bit from, you know, the traditional that we're used to, but at the same time, I thought he did an excellent job in it. I really enjoyed it.
Like for me, The Dark Knight Rises, there was a lot of problems because, just like you said, James, director Christopher Nolan really created a grounded, gritty, realistic world and universe.
Yeah.
With Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, it was just, dang, this could happen in our time. This could happen if there was somebody that had enough resources, and technology like this. Sure, I can see that happening. But when The Dark Knight Rises came along, all of a sudden we got magical knee braces that heal someone who's been laid up in bed for 8 years. And, they took a lot of liberties with the plot, Well, he got thrown in this prison and he got his back broken, but there just happened to be this doctor in the prison that could, pop his back into place without any medical equipment or anything like this.
No surgery.
So, yeah, it got a little off in left field for me. I think a lot of people feel the same as far as when you compare The Dark Knight Rises to the other Nolan-verse movies. James, a lot of people feel that way, man. A lot of people like Bane. He's iconic to a lot. And everybody likes to do the, "Hello, I'm Bane. I fight in the darkness." Everybody likes to do that voice. So, hey, it is what it is. I'll go ahead and give another controversial hot take. I'm not a big fan of Brie Larson as Captain Marvel.
That's not dude. Have you read do you even internet? Are you kidding me?
Maybe I'm not in the minority with this one, but I hate to be that type of guy that's like, she should smile more, because that was the whole thing, right? With the first movie, like, don't tell me to smile because I'm a woman and I can do whatever I want, Yeah. It's not that. It's just that her personality just feels very dull and bland. It seems like she doesn't really bring much to the table. How do I word this in a politically correct way? Her physical attributes, it seems like she's just a scrawny person, And when you think of a hero, you think of like, not necessarily like for female hero, I don't think of like bulky and just like swole or cut up or anything like that. But she definitely doesn't meet, like the expectations that were created from what we see in the comics, right? It doesn't also help that in real life, she's not a very nice person and not a very cool person, at least in my opinion. But what do you guys think about Brie Larson as Captain Marvel?
I'm on the same lines of what you said, as far as the, her physical traits, you think like she'd be more oof, and more, I don't know. I feel like the role that she was in, I don't know. It's something was off. I'm still kind of on the fence with it. Like, I liked the movie. Yeah. I liked her character, but at the same time I was like, more could be given.
Yep. The movie was good enough, but even when you look at Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, she's not necessarily like jacked like China, the female wrestler, but right. I don't know, like just physically, like she looks more imposing. She makes me feel like she would be more imposing than Brie Larson. Brie Larson looks like like a basic white chick, honestly.
Yeah, I think the general opinion is that Captain Marvel is kind of in that lower tier of MCU films, and for a lot of people, it's right towards the bottom. And I think the reason is because of the casting choice with Brie Larson more than anything. I think the other thing was that the Skrulls were just completely different in that movie than what we had been introduced to through animation and through comic books and all that kind of stuff. They were just a completely different character that made a heel turn and became good guys all of a sudden. And so that was kind of an interesting thing. I really think that Brie Larson is the main reason that people don't like that movie. And it has to do, I think, with the fact that they kind of made the character a little too powerful. Like, she almost didn't have to try as hard as an actress or as a martial artist or any of that kind of stuff. Like you mentioned, Gal Gadot, I mean, she obviously took tons of lessons learning how to do fighting and how to do all that kind of stuff. She did fantastic in that movie. When you compare the two, it's like there's really no comparison. I'm not saying that Brie Larson didn't do any of that training, because she obviously did some with her little scrum with Jude Law at the beginning and a bunch of other stuff, but I think they made the character almost too powerful. It left the acting to be desired. It left a lot of other things to be desired. Ultimately, when she showed up in Endgame, I was just kind of like, oh, so here comes, Captain Marvel to just, knock spaceships out of the air and save the day. It was so lame almost, just because it was just like, okay, I'm showing up to help you peasants again. It was a very weird way that she showed up to help. And so I don't know. I'm just not a fan of the character in general. I think most people weren't, which is kind of why they're having to introduce Photon and Ms. Marvel in the next movie to kind of bolster those ratings up a little bit.
Color be excited about that, because I think it's hilarious that Brie Larson had such an ego already. You know, like she could.
Oh yeah.
You could just tell that she was so cocky, and just like when you compare her to Gal Gadot knew how important Wonder Woman was to women and how iconic the character was. Well, Brie Larson already had this attitude, and now in her sequel movie, it's not just about her anymore. It's about Photon, and it's also going to be about Ms. Marvel. So I think that that's going to spice things up a little bit and make that movie a lot more interesting.
I think it's almost like they just kind of basically said, we got to do something to improve your customer service here. Okay. The people don't like you, and we got to get somebody that can make these people smile and feel good about the movie. So that's what I think they're having to do. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of her either. If you read the message boards, you'll see that's the general prevailing opinion. Brie Larson was a pretty terrible choice for that.
Topher Grace as Venom.
Bro, I can't believe I missed that one. I can't believe I missed that one.
I don't know what they were thinking when they cast Topher Grace in that role, because he was horrible. Look, it was like I was watching Eric Foreman play Venom, okay, from that 70s show.
That's all it was.
It was
That's all it was.
That's all it was. That's all he was. And it was, I don't know. It's kind of like they just offered him a big sum of money. It was like, hey, we really need you to play this role for us, so just play it. Just do you. I don't feel like he did any research on the character. I don't feel like he applied anything special. Yeah, just garbage.
It was terrible.
You could tell that Sam Raimi really truly didn't care about putting Venom in that movie. I've heard those rumors before that, originally it was supposed to be Sam Raimi creating his Spider-Man movie with just focusing on the Sandman and possibly the arc between Harry and Peter. But he did not want to put Venom in that movie. And you can tell it comes across the screen, not just with the casting choice, but just the whole, like the character barely gets any screen time. And when the character does get screen time, it's just like Topher Grace does not fill those shoes at all. It's like a nerdy kid. Just the same thing with Jesse Eisenberg trying to play Lex Luthor. A nerdy kid trying to play an imposing, villainous force like that.
Yeah.
Just doesn't work.
No.
The thing about Eddie Brock is that Eddie Brock, he was a jerk, but he wasn't just a jerk. He was also like a gym rat. Like he was ripped. Okay. And that's what made Venom so imposing, was the fact that he took this attitude from this guy when he connected with him, as well as his huge physical status, and that's what made him this gigantic, fearful monster. And Topher Grace, it was a swing and a miss. There's no doubt. Spider-Man 3, I just like to pretend it doesn't exist in general. So
another one for me. I cannot pronounce this actor's name. I'm gonna try, but I'm gonna butcher it. Adewale 𝐴𝐾𝐚𝐽 Agbaji, the guy that played Killer Croc.
Oh,
like maybe it wasn't necessarily his fault, but that portrayal of Killer Croc, oh my gosh, it was just so far off base.
Dude, Killer Croc has been portrayed properly on the big screen. It was just unfortunately in The Amazing Spider-Man as the Lizard. That was the Killer Croc. All they had to do was take that animation and put it into the movie, and that was Killer Croc. But they didn't do that. They tried to do that makeup and all that. It was terrible. Yeah,
I can remember playing. I don't know if you guys are gamers, but back in the day, I played Batman: Arkham Asylum. I think it was. Yeah.
Yes.
When
yes.
Batman gets trapped in the asylum. And that stage where you're in the sewers, you're trapped in the sewers, and you have to find a way out. And you're trapped in there with Killer Croc. That is probably the scariest moment in a video game that I've ever experienced. That's scarier than anything in Resident Evil or whatever else. I mean, Killer Croc is terrifying in that bit in the game. Then we see him in the Suicide Squad, and he's wearing gold chains. He's watching like MTV music videos, like
wearing a hoodie.
Come on, what is this, man? This is not Killer Croc. Killer Croc is terrifying. He's a wild card, and he is not what they put on screen.
I agree with all of that. I agree with all of that. You know, the Suicide Squad took a few liberties like that, but that was one of them I just was not a fan of, for sure.
They made a terrifying character like silly.
That whole movie, though, I'm not gonna knock the whole movie because there were parts in it that I like. Suicide Squad, there's parts that I like. Killer Croc, they dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah,
it just took away from him being, you know, this beast, this apex predator. It just took away from all that, you know, with the extra stuff they did.
When you look at the new Suicide Squad movie, King Shark is kind of goofy. You know, he's always been a little goofy in the comics, and then in some of the cartoons, he's a little goofy. It's okay. But even even King Shark is a little scarier than what they put on screen for Killer Croc, you know? So
yeah,
if King Shark is a little goofy, you know, Killer Croc needs to be just like straight up scary. But yeah, I think we all agree on that. Another one that I'll go ahead and say is Colin Farrell as Bullseye. Didn't really work for me.
The whole movie, I just like to pretend didn't happen, but yeah, let's just, I mean, the Daredevil movie was just, I don't even want to get into it. I could write a thesis, so I'll just let you guys talk about it.
What'd you think, James?
The Daredevil movie was one of those movies that when it first came out and I first saw it, obviously I was a lot younger, but when I first saw it, I was like, oh yeah, this is cool. And then when I went back and watched it later, I was like, wow, this is lame. You know, it had like one or two significant, memorable moments in it, but the rest of the I guess the way that it was written and the cast just didn't go in together. But I will give praise to the Netflix series of Daredevil because I felt like that was done way better than and casted really well and written so well compared to the movie.
Everything in that movie could fit exactly for the topic that we're talking about today, right? Ben Affleck was terrible as the Daredevil. You know, as far as Elektra, I think that Jennifer Gardner left a lot to be desired there. I think that Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin. I mean, I think it's just a fail casting across the board in that whole movie. And that's one of those things that if you don't have the right cast, it doesn't really matter about the directorial style or the cinematography or the special effects. None of that really matters. Now, all that was lacking as well, and that's why it's a terrible movie. But it all started by not having the right cast. Fortunately, they kind of learned from that and moved on. And you know, when comic book movies were casted, they did a little bit better job with that stuff. So, you know, you can't swing and miss on every character, and they just did.
Michael Clark Duncan wasn't that bad to me as Kingpin.
He was awful. Stop it.
He's got the look, man. But hey, what I was going to say, you guys bring up something interesting, and I think one day I should just do a straight up full video on this topic. When we were younger, was it because we were kids that these movies were good to us when we originally saw them, or was it because that was all we had at the time? We had such little to choose from. Maybe it's a little bit of both. I agree, James. When I was a kid and I saw that film for the first time, I thought it was like the coolest thing since sliced bread. I mean, you know, I can remember bragging to all my buddies about it at the time, all my 8-year-old friends, like, you got to see Daredevil. This movie's so cool. You know, there's such cool action and everything.
Yeah.
Those movies just didn't age well, you know?
No.
Keaton's Batman movies are similar, but they still hold up better than Daredevil, you know, like it's even the old Superman movies.
Yeah, that was Burton's directing style. I think that kind of introduced the idea of a darker superhero instead of one that was quirky. Yeah, and it was kind of the first one, and so that's why it's kind of held up a little bit. I'm glad you brought up Batman, okay, because now it's time for my spicy hot take, okay, which is that, and I'm going to say this once, and I know that people are going to go crazy, okay. Batman has never been done properly on the big screen. I'm going to say that again. Batman has never been done properly on the big screen. I know you're thinking I forgot somebody. I guarantee you I did not forget anybody. Okay. Batman has never been done properly on the big screen. I can find flaws in every single one. Okay.
Sure.
There you go. All right.
Because he wears a lot of different hats. You know, he's not only Playboy billionaire. He's not only the world's greatest detective. but you know, he wears a lot of different hats. He's not only the world's best mixed martial artist or whatever, you know. Sure, you can point out the flaws with Ben Affleck's Batman, that he was a murderous psychopath. You can point out the flaws with Christian Bale's Batman, that he really wasn't that good of a detective, and some of the detectives.
The voice. We already talked about Bane's voice. We got to talk about this is in a car, and we got to.
Okay.
That's what that feels like. Give me a break, man.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I will defend the voice.
No, there is no defense for the voice.
I think
zero defense.
I think in that world that Christopher Nolan created, it makes sense to me that, like, say for instance, if I was Batman,
Nope.
I wouldn't show up to you guys, and you know, if you guys were in the middle of a bank robbery and I popped in and I saved the day, I wouldn't be talking to you guys like, "Hey, Tim, James, are you okay? I hope everybody's okay. I'll see you later." I have to try to disguise my voice in some type of way.
I don't care. I don't care. Do anything else. Do anything else but that voice. Anything else in the world. That voice was ridiculous. If I was a bad guy and somebody showed up talking in that voice, I would be like, dude, do you need to have surgery or something? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, it was absolutely ridiculous, man. It was absolutely ridiculous. So yes, so that was my big thing with Bale, was the voice. I could not stand the voice. The other thing with Bale was he kind of, as Bruce Wayne, was a little bit too carefree. I think, you know, Bruce Wayne isn't the guy that lets his company just absolutely plummet the way that Bale's Bruce Wayne did. And so that was one I was not a fan of as well. Keaton had that ridiculous suit where he was always kind of moving around like this, and he looked like a cardboard box trying to do karate. You know, there was just there's flaws in every Batman that's been on the big screen. I have yet to see Batman on the big screen and be like, that's Batman.
I'll say this about Batman, and I'll drop it. As far as the voice, like I said, I don't have a problem with it. But Christian Bale is not my favorite portrayal of Batman. I think my favorite Batman was Ben Affleck. A lot of people think that's crazy, but that's how I feel. I like his costume better. I
definitely like the costume better. I definitely like the costume better. That's true. I felt like he was a competent billionaire, which was good. But yeah, you're right about the murderous rampage. I mean, Batman doesn't use guns, and Batman doesn't go that psycho on people. So
ruthlessly murder
exactly
dozens of people in one night.
I would definitely say that Ben Affleck surprised me. I did not expect to like it as much as I did, but I still did not agree with it I did not say that's the Batman I've been looking for. Maybe Pattinson will take his, you know, maybe Pattinson's weird emo Bruce Wayne will surprise me, and it'll be the one that does it for me. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like everybody was in that same predicament. Like when we all heard that Ben Affleck was being casted as Batman, we were all like, "Oh well, that's a horrible casting choice." Totally surprised me. I know y'all are like, "Oh, well, he's murderous and all that." I thought he was awesome. I thought he was awesome in that role. And honestly,
like I said, he's my favorite Batman.
I'm not gonna say he's my favorite Batman, because my favorite Batman's another Batman, but we're not gonna get into that. But
if it's from the Schumacher series, I'm going to ask you to leave, James. Don't tell me it's from the Schumacher
Val Kilmer.
Oh my goodness! Oh, even Val Kilmer admits he was terrible.
Right? No, he said that. But he's one of my favorite Batmans. Not from the standpoint that we're looking from, but for the nostalgia standpoint.
Yeah, so, hey, I can get behind that.
That was the first Batman movie I saw in theaters too, so I also have the nostalgia as well.
Right.
Val Kilmer is a great actor too, guys.
He's a phenomenal actor.
I wish they had given him the resources to be a good Batman. Unfortunately, they just didn't. It wasn't really his fault. So
they gave him bat nipples.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bat nipples. Oh my God. Yeah, but no, I agree with you that Ben Affleck was probably one of my favorite Batmans. I liked him more than I liked what's his face? We just mentioned. Christian. I liked him better than Christian.
Me too.
Like I feel like if you would have put both of those Batmans in a room, Ben Affleck would have like torn them apart. You know?
Oh yeah,
so,
100%.
Andrew Garfield in the Amazing Spider-Man franchise.
Oh yes,
I
was
agree.
hoping we'd get there.
Garbage.
Yep.
Yeah,
I didn't like him as an actor in that role. I feel like he didn't fit the bill for me. And then him as an actor, I wasn't impressed with his performance. That whole franchise had so many different characters that just left me scratching my head. I had to throw that one in the mix.
I would say the one thing about Andrew Garfield, the thing that just is kind of hilarious, is that his portrayal of Peter Parker, normally when you're thinking Peter Parker, you're thinking like the least likely guy that could ever be Spider-Man, you know, the scrawny guy, the nerdy guy, the guy that's really nervous around girls, the guy with no confidence. That's the guy that you think of. You don't think of the emo skater punk that can slam dunk a basketball from half court. You know,
Right.
if I was a kid at that high school, I would be like, you know, that kind of might be Spider-Man, you know? And so that's kind of that was kind of a weird direction that they went anyway. And then on top of that, like I said, he really wasn't a nerd. He really wasn't. His portrayal of Peter Parker was really bad. I felt like his portrayal of Spider-Man, even though he tried to get the comedy and the sarcasm and all that kind of stuff, and it just didn't land with me. It didn't feel natural to him. So I don't know. I agree. Andrew Garfield, the Amazing Spider-Man series in general, just not a fan.
Yeah, he is not he's not my Spider-Man. Okay. He is definitely by far the worst portrayal of Spider-Man that we've seen on screen so far, excluding the 1970s TV show. But
yeah, of course.
So yeah, I agree 100%. He's too cool to be Spider-Man and just didn't work for me. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Everyone else, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you share, like, and subscribe. If you haven't already, check us out on Instagram. We're at Real Comic Book Cinema. You can also find us on Facebook. Guys, until next time, have a good one.